Welcome back to Coates in Conversation. I'm your host, Kendrick Coates. Got another phenomenal episode today with my guest, Jack Glenn. We dive into a couple different topics, one being mental health. At the beginning, we talk about his journey playing football and why he had to leave the sport of football due to concussions and how it affected his mental well-being. Later on, we talk more about his mental health experiences and how his journey has improved many of the relationships in his life. I think this is an awesome episode for you to listen to. I hope you enjoy it as much as I had with Jack on this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe to Coates in Conversation for more future episodes like this one. Jack Glenn, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Man, I can't complain. I'm super excited to have this conversation today. I know we talked off air a few weeks ago just about kind of your experiences, and
Mhm.
it was cool because me as a former athlete as well, just being in the world of sports and all of the things that come along with sports. So definitely will be an interesting perspective for our viewers and listeners just to hear about your experience. So let's get into it. So my first question I have for you, can you take us back to your early days in football and what initially drew you to the sport and what were some of the most cherishable memories during your playing career?
So, what initially drew me to the sport. So, as a young kid, I was a huge fan of Rob Gronkowski, and so, I would be in the living room and I would be watching highlights with my dad, and I would just be like mesmerized by this just giant of a man that could do so many things on the field. And so I would always want to play football, but my dad would say like he wanted me to wait till middle school. So waited until middle school, and I got into middle school, and I played sixth grade. That was my first year, and I got thrown on the O line, so I wanted to be tight end. I got put on O line, and I was like, "Ah, like come on!" But I got the opportunity to do that in my first season. I absolutely fell in love with the sport, and the camaraderie of a football team. There is no other like feeling like that. We are all so close and so goofy, and we could mess around with each other, and like we all knew that we loved each other and all that. And so that was an amazing experience in my life growing up, just playing from sixth grade to 10th grade, just being with my boys. We got really close in that aspect. And that was probably my favorite memory from all those years is just, I mean, I got to meet so many different people from that, and I just made so many friends, and I'm so close with all these guys now. And going off on to separate colleges, I get to keep some of these ties, and I've got one friend going down to Alabama to play football. I've got one friend going to Dartmouth, one at Samford. And so, it's just the connections I made with it and the friends I made with it, and just being able to celebrate on and off the field with those guys. That was a really magical experience for me.
The part you said as far as looking up to Rob Gronkowski and then getting put on the line, man, that's I know so many of my friends back when I think we called it. I'm from Illinois. We called it JFL Junior Football League, where
Hmm.
many of us had like these dreams and these goals of playing specific positions, and
Yep.
then at the start of the season, some of my friends get put on the line or get put at free safety. And in JFL, there's nothing's going on at free
Yep.
safety other than just kind of watching
Yeah.
the game. But
Yeah.
you mentioned how you've been able to keep some of those same friends as y'all have transitioned from middle school, high school football. I think that is so important for some of our younger listeners on this podcast because I always say once an athlete, always an athlete. Y'all can always get on the phone and say, "Hey man, remember those days?" Or even as y'all go into, new careers, being able to take bits and pieces. How have you seen some of your playing experiences transition or translate into, some of this phase of life that you're in right now?
Um, uh, that's a good question. Definitely communication. Um, so that's definitely a skill that I learned on the field with a bunch of these guys, and so I mean, I can definitely understand now how that translates to outside relationships, whether it be family, friends, intimate relationships, anything like that. Communication is definitely something that I learned on the field, and I know how important that is in the real world. And just being able to translate different things, different emotions and situations into something that someone else can understand. I think that is a huge skill set that I learned on the football field.
Yeah, communication, and you see it. I see it all the time too, where you know sometimes coming from the I used to be in the corporate world at one point, and you're seeing so many different things take place, and so many misunderstandings take place too, because it's just a simple, well, this wasn't communicated with this person, or that wasn't communicated with that person. And so that is, I think, when we talk about sports, some of the skill sets that we can take from the sport is communicating. So if you're playing a specific position on the field and you don't, we'll just say, for example, playing cornerback, if for you've got a receiver that you're guarding and he runs a slant route towards the linebackers and you don't communicate with the linebackers, well then something coverage might get break down, and then the
Hmm.
guy's running for a touchdown. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that, specifically that piece of communication that you've been able to take with you as you've kind of grown and developed within your own career.
Hmm.
um, you know, I think when we think about sports, we think about some of the injuries and just different things that come with the sport. So concussions are, a common concern in many contact sports, especially football. So can you share with us your personal journey and the pivotal moment when you realized the impact of concussions on your health and well-being?
Oh yeah. So my first concussion dates back to sixth grade, and that was a real minor one. Me and my family, we weren't too worried about that. But then in seventh grade, I got a pretty major concussion. It took me out of school for a month. I was at home, wasn't really supposed to be on screens, wasn't supposed to be really doing anything that was super stimulating for my brain. And I mean, as a young teen, that is super difficult not being able to have these interactions with people. And I mean, you feel like you're missing out on a whole lot. And so, I mean, for my mental well-being, that concussion when I was 13, 14 years old, I mean, it seriously messed up the chemical balances in my brain. And I mean, I was down a lot, and I mean, super sad, and anxiety would kick in a whole lot. And so from that concussion on, I knew that, like, okay, if I ever get put into this situation again, like, I mean, that could be really bad for my mental health, because I mean, that really did shoot me down a drain. And I mean, I'm thankful for the person that produced out of it, because it made me so much more conscious of all of this. But in seventh grade, at that concussion, after just like the post, like thinking back on it and thinking about it, I just really grasped, like, oh my gosh, like it could really affect my brain. This can affect my learning. This can affect all these different things. And then in 10th grade, got my third concussion, and it was a bad one also. And I mean, that's why I got glasses. It sped up my an astigmatism in my eye. And so that's when I was like, oh wow, like I really cannot afford to get another one, because I mean, it's starting to like physically, these concussions are breaking me down. So um seventh grade was definitely the pivotal moment where I was like, okay, I need to be more conscious, I need to be more aware. Like, this cannot happen again. It happened again in 10th grade. And so then I just completely took myself out of football. And I mean, that was difficult, but it's because I understood how important my mental health is and my physical health, and that I just need to protect it a little bit more than what I was doing.
Man, that's fascinating. Just kind of hearing the just levels of how it affected you. I think
Mhm.
it's important to highlight for our listeners and viewers who may be involved in sports and don't necessarily know what it feels like to have a concussion. So, if you're able to give a little bit more context on when you got your first concussion or your second concussion, what did you actually feel while you were playing the sport?
Mhm. So, first concussion first concussion, I really don't even remember. I remember my buddy, he would tell me, he would be like, "Yeah, you didn't seem like 100% there, but, like, didn't last too long," and I mean, I don't remember that one at all. But my second one, um, there I had headaches. I had a lot of headaches, and so this one, I was in a football game and I was playing running back, actually. This was the one game I played running back there, like, give the big boy the ball and let's see what he can do. So so I was running and on the outside, and I got nailed by this one dude, and I hit my tailbone, and it was actually I didn't hit my head, it was whiplash. My head flung back, and that's what gave me my concussion. Um, and I mean, I was just very not aware of my surroundings. It was hard to communicate. It was hard to remember like things I was doing like in the moment. Like my dad would like, "Hey, like, could you come like help me move this thing real quick?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, let me go throw shoes on." I'd go throw shoes on. I'd come back out and I'd be like, "I don't know why I just put shoes on." And so that and constant headaches and I mean, it was just slow. Like I couldn't do anything too fast or else everything would start to get jumbled up and I would just get like cooked. Um I mean, it really is just a strenuous, boring process that I had to go through.
So I'm assuming with that as well, there were, and maybe you've talked about it offline, but were there any type of um, academic issues that made it more difficult for you when you were going through this process of recovering from the concussion?
Oh yeah. So in 7th grade, I missed that month of school and I came back and I had to make up. Uh, I didn't they said I had to make up all the work, but my teachers, they were great, and they helped speed me through that process. I did not have to make up nearly all that work. I would have to take tests and stuff, but they would help me out, and I would get certain help because I was that far behind, and even coming back, I still had this concussion, so, like, I couldn't, like my functioning my cognitive function was just, like, still a little so I got very great assistance and very well caught up through the school system. But I mean, it did take. I mean, I think it took like 3 to 4 months for me to like like completely heal and to completely be academically where I was before that concussion. And same thing in 10th grade. I had to go through that exact same process. I got a plan through my high school that like would allow me to work slower and like I could take tests up to like a month after they were given. Um, and so I mean, that was my school was so fantastic about the whole process, and I'm very thankful for that because I mean, if they weren't, and if I actually had to like do like literally everything with not that much help and no plans helping me, then I would not be academically where I am today. So I think that their patience and their willingness to help, I mean, that was fantastic getting me to where I am.
The fact that you had so many folks around you that were open to assisting you through this journey is a thing to point out because I sometimes imagine and wonder how many athletes that are in contact sports that may have some type of cognitive issue. Is it actually from their concussion that they may not have known about and it's
Mhm.
affecting them in the classroom? Or if it is it something else going on? And so I think that when we talk about concussions, it's so important as far as the awareness because it can just based off of the information that you just mentioned as far as your story and going through this process, that you had people that were around you that basically guided you through this process so you weren't alone. Whereas there are some athletes out there that may not be in school systems that have that type of accommodation that is allows them to heal through this process. And I think about it too from the standpoint of, you know, there are times when concussions happen and it's like, oh, take a week off and then get back in it. And
Mhm.
it's like, wait a minute here. If somebody pulled their hamstring, you know, we take our time with that because you have to run. But in sports, you still have to think. You have to be
Yeah.
cognitively in the game. And so I'm
Mhm.
so glad that, you know, that experience has not only taught you about yourself, but it highlights the importance of giving athletes support once they do go through some type of experience like that. So I think when we were talking off air, you'd kind of told me about stepping away from the sport of football. What did you do once you stepped away? Because I'm sure that was difficult, especially from an emotional side of things, stepping away from a sport that you were passionate about and that you loved. So tell us about what that process was from stepping away from football and then trying to figure out what the next thing was going to be.
Mhm. Um, Stepping away from football was a very, very, very difficult decision. I remember, um, so with my concussion, I couldn't drive, because I mean, it's probably some sort of danger out there, me driving with that. So my mom, she took me to the high school, and I went to go talk to the head coach and the offensive coordinator. I told him like I can't continue to do football with like my mental health and my physical health being at risk at this point. And I just remember just like it felt like the world beneath me had just dropped. Cause I mean, as a young teen, and I mean like my hormones are everywhere and I'm growing up and it's a big period in your life, a big growth period in your life. I had invested so much time into football, and that was really all I knew about myself. And so, stepping away from football, I knew that was good for my overall health, but emotionally, it was very sad, and I did not know what to do with myself. I remember I would come home and I would just be like, "Wow, like I'm not invested in anything." I remember thinking, like, I mean, I don't have any value. Like, I mean, all my value was I put all my value into football. And obviously people around me, they didn't see that. They saw me for who I was, but in my mind, all I knew was like I'm a football player and that's where I put all my time. So, watching the football games online and just like coming home and doing nothing, wow, like I mean that shot me far down into a depression, and it was a really sad period of time for me. Um, but I went and got lunch with one friend of mine who he was thinking about quitting football at the time. He was a really good football player, and I remember we were talking, and he told me he was like, "You have your world open now." He was like, "You just lost something that took so much of your time." And he was like, "What you don't understand and what you need to understand is that you have time to do anything that you want." And he told me, he was like, I remember this one line sticks in my head. We were in his truck. We were sitting in my driveway, and he was like, for all you know, he was like, you could get shredded. Like you could get into the weight room and you can start lifting weights and you can just stick to that. And that line stuck so hard with me because I was like, I really can do that now. And so from there on, I once I started healing correctly, I got into the weight room. I lost 45 pounds, which I was amazed with myself. I mean, I would look in the mirror and just be like, awesome. But I lost 45 pounds, helped so much. That helped tremendously. And that's something I put my value in. And then another thing is, I was like, all right, well, like I wanna be able to do something now, like something with a team. And so I joined the track team. I did shot put, and I wasn't amazing at it, but I mean, it was something I could put my time into. So that and weightlifting, I mean, those were two big things that helped me break back out and helped me like fully understand like okay like I'm more than just an athlete. I'm more than just someone that can put their time into sports and be good at sports and like that's all I know, like a meathead. Like I am my own individual, and um I mean quitting football and branching out and doing other things really helped me understand that.
Man, there's so much in what you just said. And I think the thing that impresses me and excites me is your friend gave you and the thing is like we go through some of these things and we're just like, man, you know what? I don't want to play sports anymore. I don't want to do anything anymore. This is where your network, the people that you're around, the circle that you're in can be so influential to your overall development, healing, growth. And the fact that your friend said you have the whole world, you can do anything, that right there is powerful because I say this to people that I'm around sometimes and some of the younger people that I mentors, your friends will dictate your future. And so if
Oh
you're
yeah.
around the wrong people, inevitably you're most times, more times than not, you're going to go the wrong direction. But if you're around people, it's kind of like that iron sharpens iron mentality. More than
Mhm.
likely, you'll get out of whatever you're going through, or you'll find different perspective on things. And the other point that you mentioned is your identity was tied in football. And it sounds like that was where you got your maybe this might not be the right word, but your validation, your worth from
Yes.
football because it's so performative. And you know when you get a first down, what happens? Everybody claps. When you get a
Yeah.
tackle, everybody claps. Touchdown, everybody claps. But you fumble the ball, everybody's like, oh, you
Yeah.
know, if you miss a tackle, everybody's so as young athletes we are in these sports and it's so performative that it has such an impact on how what we view validation and self-worth. So enc- I'm encouraged that you were able to see yourself, as you put it, more than an athlete, that you had more value to provide the world. And I think even athletes now, whether, you know, middle school, high school, collegiate, or professional, leaving a sport can sometimes be damaging to one's mental health.
Mhm.
So going into that direction, I know we talked about a little bit about you going to therapy,
Mhm.
and I'm curious to know what you've learned about yourself through therapy and how has therapy helped you navigate stressful or dark times as a high school or college student.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, right there, along with what I just said about like knowing my value and knowing my personal identity, first going into therapy, and I started uh, right during that second concussion. So in seventh grade, I was super, 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 super stubborn, and I was like, I'm not gonna talk to this lady. Like, I'm keeping this to myself. I don't trust you. Like all that stuff. And I'm sure a young teen, like obviously you're gonna be like that. But as I grew up and as I continued to go, I would share more and more and more. And I mean, it really did take me like that third concussion in 10th grade to fully just be like, all right, you know what? Here's everything. I'm not gonna hide anything from you because I understand that you can truly help me and help me flourish as a human being. And so 10th grade, when I started working out and I started gaining my self confidence back, my therapist and just going to therapy really, really, really helped me be okay with the person that I am. It helped me understand that yes, I have flaws, uh, but I can work on those flaws, but those flaws aren't gonna hold me back from the world. It helped me understand that me being the human that I am is okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to I mean, it's okay to do certain things and understand, okay, that might not have been the best idea, but I'm gonna grow and I'm gonna get better. So just oh, finding my identity was the most helpful thing that therapy brought me. And as a school in high school, you've got your cliques, and I mean everyone's trying to fit in to be a certain person, and you find all these kids being someone that they're not because they want to be friends with people. Like I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. And like growing up, I would be like, man, like I really want to hang with these guys. Like they're pretty cool. And so I would try to change a little bit and I try to fit in with them. But going to therapy, it made me understand like if me as myself is not good enough for these people to want to be friends with me, then there's no reason for me to be friends with them. Like, yeah, you can be acquaintances, and there's no reason to be mean to them. But like, if y'all aren't gonna be friends, y'all aren't gonna be friends. There's no reason to force that. And it made me, I mean, it made me appreciate my homies so much more because like they put up with me. They put up with all my crap. And I know sometimes I can be a little out there. I can be a little crazy. And it just made me appreciate life as it is so much more than having to like fake my way through
I think that's the end of the podcast.
life.
Man, you're preaching there. There's so many things that you hit on. Just being able to be okay with who you are.
Mhm,
And so often in our society, we are given messages that we have to be somebody else in order to be validated, appreciated, seen, heard, loved.
mhm,
And you can see it. There are so many people out there being things that they are not.
mhm.
So, this fact that you have been able to grow into who you are as a person and be comfortable in your own skin, I give you my, I'm giving you your flowers right now because there are so many people at your age that are like, well, let me do this to attract this partner, or let me do this so some of my guy friends can just like really like me and appreciate me being around. But how happy are people having to put on this front or put on this mask
Yeah.
to try to fit in?
Mhm.
And I can't remember what song it was. I don't know who the artist was, but he's like, I rather fit out than to fit into this mold that society thinks I should be.
Mm.
And that reminded me, everything that you just said there, that reminds me of that. And man, I have goosebumps just because as you were talking, and of course, me being in the mental health space as a marriage and family therapy intern, these are the things that we talk about in therapy. What
Mhm.
do you want for yourself?
Yeah.
What do you ultimate want to who do you ultimately want to be? And if you decide to have kids one day, who do you want your kids to look up to? The
Yep.
real you, or the mask that you're putting on to please everybody else?
Yep.
Or the mask that you're putting on to keep up with the Joneses? It's not healthy, and inevitably that mask or that facade eventually crumbles, and then you're just kind of left in a corner and you're like, wow, like, where are all my friends?
Mhm.
Curious to know, from you going to therapy, how have you seen it influence, or have you seen it influence any of the friends or any of the circles that you're in now?
I mean, I've definitely seen it influence, uh, my intimate relationships, my family relationships, my friendships, um, my friendships, me it's crazy, it's crazy. You would think that, like, you putting on that facade, you putting on this fake mask and trying to be friends with these people, you'd be like, "Oh, okay." Like, you're gonna be friends with everyone, like, if you try and accommodate to everyone. Me, just, like, being who I am and just being the person that I want and like, enjoy to be, has made me friends with so many people. And not just like trying to fake and like be friends with like these people or just these people. Just being, I mean, I'm a friendly person, and so just being a friendly person has opened up my world to so many different people. And like those cliques in high school. You got your cool kid, and I mean, you got your nerdier kids, like all that whole spectrum. And just being a friendly person, I mean, you can be friends with anyone on that spectrum, and everyone likes you. And it's not like a people pleasing type thing. It's just you being you, and you're gonna attract people that you never thought you would attract. And so, I mean, for me, just being myself has made me friends with so many more people rather than just being trying to be friends with a certain group of people. Um, my family relationships, I mean, it's definitely I I've got 3 older sisters, and I'm super close with one of them. And so just me naturally being super close with one of them, uh, I would kinda shield out the other 2, which is not a good thing at all. But as I've grown up and as I've, like, I've matured and I've understood, like, okay, like, that's probably a bad thing, it's made me more open to my 2 others. I love all 3 of my sisters, but it's made me more open to them, and, I'll go and I'll hang out with them, and I'll do different things with them, and not just this one sister. So it opens you up to a whole new world. And you said something about, like, putting on like a certain mask for like your spouse. And oh my gosh, as a teenage guy, I'll be honest, I'd see a pretty girl and I'd be like, okay, like I want to go talk to her. Like I gotta put my A game on. Like I gotta go up and I gotta hit it out of the park with her. And so I'd go up and I'd put on this facade and it wouldn't work. And I'd be like, oh man. But if you're just yourself, like what if that was a horrible person and you just attracted them by being a fake person? And like now, like you're dating for marriage, you don't want that to be the mother, you know? Like
Hmm.
if they're a
Yeah.
bad person, so you just if you're just yourself and you attract people that you genuinely love around you, your life is gonna be 10 times better.
Man, you sure you don't want to become a motivational speaker?
Thought about
Because
it.
you're just, I mean, your microphone's on fire right now, man. And because you go back to kind of high school, and I was with you. I mean, I feel everything that you're saying, because same for me. High school, just like, hey, you go up to a girl and it's like, oh, it didn't go the way we wanted it to be. And so that there happens to so many people. I mean, I see it even today. But the thing is, of course, being in the mental health space of marriage and family therapy, you start seeing the people who are actually genuinely connected, interested, and love each other, and then the people that are just with each other just because.
Yep.
There's other folks that are just staying together for the kids, and unfortunately, that affects the children as well. I mean, that because kids aren't dumb, kids are very aware of things that are going
Yes.
on. And so being able to heal yourself to create, and I call it generational healing, because so many of us, either whether it be through school, we've had bad examples, whether we've seen coaches that were bad examples and we've had traumatic experiences, or getting rejected. How do you come back from that? And being able to go to therapy, which I applaud you for that, especially in this day and age where mental health for men is, there's just such a stigma for us to go to therapy. For you to continue your journey of healing, one, I appreciate that and I love that. But secondly, if you do decide to have kids one day, it's like, wow, like my dad's awesome. Like I don't have to worry about him faking or whatever it may be. But the
Mhm.
other point you said, you also have been able to get yourself to a point or heal enough to where you have this wide spectrum of people that you can connect with, that you can be friends with. And all of that stemmed from you healing and showing up as a friendly, loving person. And I can hear all of those things as you speak, just the genuine love, curiosity, excitement that you have for people in life. And I think if people went through their lives having that type of mindset, to where it's just like, you know what, we have differences, but I love you. Hey, we have differences, but I'm happy. I want to connect with you. Because
Mhm.
we do all have our differences. We all have, for lack of better words, we have baggage. But
Mhm.
can we put those things, set those things aside, and genuinely just be curious about the other person on the other side of the conversation?
once we do that, the whole dynamic shifts and you're like, wow, like there are so many amazing, awesome, cool people out there in the world.
Oh
And
yeah.
then the last piece you hit, which I think this is fascinating, is your healing and going through therapy. You've been able to see it impact your family in a positive way, or the interactions that you've had in a positive way. And it's just like everybody, it should be, I wish we could do this, but we can't. I wish we could make therapy mandatory for everybody, because
Yeah.
we all want to be happy. We all want to have flourishing relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic. We all want to have genuine relationships. And
Mm.
so, man, I we could probably talk for 2 hours just about that piece there that you just talked
Yeah.
about. But I just cannot thank you enough for one being vulnerable and sharing those things, because I think there are people out there that are like, man, like I don't have very good relationships. This relationship's not healthy. Oh, I want to have stronger relationships with my siblings or my parents or whatever the case may be. Many people want that, but it's like, how do you take the first step to do those things?
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself as you continue your journey of growing and healing? Where do you see yourself 5, 10, 15 years from now?
For me, I'm majoring in nursing, and the reason for me majoring in nursing is because I want to see like a direct impact of me healing someone else. And for me, like therapy, that's another thing. Like I was also super interested in going into therapy because just being able to see people grow mentally is just, I think that is a very beautiful thing. And so being able to heal people physically and mentally as a nurse, I think that that's a lovely thing, and that's something that I want to be. And so I want to be a nurse. I'm into competitive powerlifting, so hopefully, just flourishing in that aspect. And I mean, having a family, wife and kids. I would love that, and that's a big thing for me. I want my kids to be able to look up to me and be like, because I look up to my dad like that. Like I see him, and I'm like, he is a man if I've ever seen one. Like he's not macho or anything. Like you think of a typical man, you think of a guy that goes, cuts logs, like all this stuff. My dad's not that macho, but he is so in tune with himself. And I just think that that is a beautiful thing for a man to have, is just to be able to be in tune with himself and lead his family onto better things in life. And I think he's done a great job with me and my siblings, and I just that's how I want to be as a father, and so that's where hopefully I see myself. Yeah.
That's awesome, man, and I love it. Just having that positive male influence
Mhm.
on you, and I could see it, man. Like this conversation, everything that you're speaking about, the positive light and the energy you have, I can tell that you're guided in such a great way, and you've got people around you that love you, care about you, and that ultimately want to see you become successful. And so that is amazing, man. So as we wrap up the conversation today, and we talked about it a little bit, but mental health stigma is still present in many fields, including in male sports. So, what advice would you give other athletes who may be afraid to either go to therapy or talk to their coaches? Because, there are some athletes that don't want to speak up about mental health because of the consequences that may come from it. That could be coaches, cutting playing time, or thinking that this athlete or that athlete isn't mentally in tune to be in a game, or it can just come from the general society saying, well, this athlete is weak. So what advice would you give an athlete that is maybe going through their own struggles and wanting to seek out mental help?
Mhm. I mean, a few things. So, the more that you delay it, the longer it is going to take for you to fix this situation. So, if you say you get it at the beginning of your season and you're like, I am not going to say a word about it. You go through summer training, you go through all like halfway through fall, and this mental health is dragging you down, and you are not able to perform, and you're not able to perform in your entire life if you are not okay mentally. Won't be able to connect with people. You won't be able to perform in your sport as you want. You might think that you are, but if you are mentally in tune and mentally healthier, then you are going to perform so much better. And it really is so frustrating that there's such a stigma around it. And if you go to therapy and if you have all these emotions, then you are a weak man. But men, when we go through these highs and lows, if we can have a support system for our lows, then you'll be 10 times better in life, and you'll be healthier overall. And it's something that people don't grasp, and they think that I have to go through this alone because like no one needs to know what I'm going through. Like I'm gonna be a weak man and no one's gonna support me. If you reach out to like, I mean, people that you're super close with, whether it's like, I mean, your spouse, your significant other, anyone in your family, your close like homeboys, your friends, like, I mean, they're going to want to help you. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're worried like about your playing time or anything, if you go up to a coach and you tell them that like you're going through something mentally and like you need help and like all this stuff, and if they tell you they're like, all right, well, we're not going to play you because of this. That okay, it depends. If they don't play you because like, okay, yeah, you really need help, then that's understandable. But if they're like, we're not going to play you because we don't think that you're a strong enough player, you don't need to be playing for them. And that's a really hard thing to grasp. And even if I was in football, I'd probably be like, okay, okay, yeah, whatever. But if people are not there to support you, I'm a big believer you should not be there, whatever the situation is. If I mean friend groups, if they're not there to support you, you don't need to be with them. And I mean that's a big thing that I think of. And another thing is if you let it get so bad, if you're having suicidal ideations, if you are not wanting to get out of bed and not want to do any of these things, it is better for you to seek help and you continue next season than you to not even have a next season and you not be there for anyone. And it's a horrible thing seeing what some men go through and knowing if they had the proper help, what they could have. And it really is sad, but something that needs to be talked about.
Envisioning a life where, kind of what you said, if you get the help, just imagine what you could have.
Yeah.
Wow. And you start thinking about those things, and you start thinking about the healing that not only you, but the people around you can have.
Hmm.
And going back to your point, if a coach comes down on you for having mental health struggles, we'll just say if you've lost a parent or you lost a friend or depressed, there's anxiety going on, and they penalize you for that, you shouldn't play for that coach. So ultimately, it's go where you are wanted,
Hmm.
respected, heard, seen, and appreciated.
Yeah.
And far too often, the more and more we suppress these emotions and these thoughts, unfortunately, others that may have gone through our similar situations can't have or don't hear, okay, this is what you need to do. This may be a positive way of going about seeking help. There's just so many things that can come out of just having a conversation. And so, Jack, for you to again be vulnerable discussing this topic and being vulnerable and transparent about your experiences playing ball and having to pivot to a different sport, and for you to be vulnerable discussing how your life has been impacted with everything that we've discussed today. I just give you your flowers, man. I appreciate you. I genuinely hope that somebody can gain some type of positive perspective or can see the light at the end of the tunnel just because of this conversation, because it was so powerful. Jack, I think you're a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
um,
Thank you.
but again, I cannot thank you enough for having this conversation today.
Of course, yeah. I'm so happy to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, for our viewers and listeners, we appreciate you tuning into this episode of Coats in Conversation. Be sure to like and subscribe. You can find all Coats in Conversation podcast episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. If you find this episode to be beneficial, or if you know of somebody that can benefit from this episode, we ask you to share it with them, because this conversation about mental health, we need to continue to have this conversation to help others. So again, we appreciate you tuning into Coats and Conversation.